Jaradharma Ava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, we are on Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text number 6, 429, 6. So, this chapter is entitled Talks Between Narada and King Prachini Barhi. So, I think we'll do word for word. Sakyaya Indriya Ganaha Jnanam Karma Cha Yakritam Sakyaha Tat Vrittayaha Pranaha Panchavritti Yatha Ragaha Sankaya Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Cha Yakritam Sakyasya Prana Panchavritiryato Ragaha Sankaya Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sakyasthavritaya Prana Panchavritiryato Ragaha Sakaya Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sakyastadvritaya Prana Panchavritir Yato Ragaha Want to chant? Sakaya Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sakyastadvritaya Prana Panchavritiryato Ragaha. You want to chant now? Sakaya Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sankyastadvritaya Prana Panchavritiryato Ragaha. Okay. Word for word. Sakaya, the male friends. Indriya Ganaha, the senses. Jnanam, knowledge. Karma, activity. Cha, also. Yat Kritam, done by the senses. Sakyaha, female friends. Tat, of the senses. Vrittayaha, engagements. Pranaha, life air. Panchavritti, having 5 processes. Yata, like. Uragaha, the serpent. Translation. The 5 working senses and the 5 senses that acquire knowledge are all male friends of Paranjani. The living entity is assisted by these senses in acquiring knowledge and engaging in activity. The engagements of the senses are known as girlfriends, and the serpent, which was described as having 5 heads, is the light air acting within the 5 circulatory processes. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna Bahir Mukha Hana Bhagavan Shakare Nikatasta Mayatare Japatiya Dare Prema Vivarta. Because of his desire to enjoy the material world, living entity is dressed with the material gross and subtle bodies. Thus he is given a chance to enjoy the senses. The senses are therefore the instruments for enjoying the material world. Consequently, the senses have been described as friends. Sometimes, because of too much sinful activity, the living entity does not get a material gross body, but hovers on the subtle platform. This is called ghostly life. Because of his not possessing a gross body, he creates a great deal of trouble in his subtle. Thus, the presence of a ghost is horrible for those who are living in the gross body. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 10, Utkramantam stitam vapi punjanam bhagunan vitam vimudhananu pashanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. That was Bhagavad Gita 15:10. The living entities are merged into the air of life, which acts in different ways for circulation. There is prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana. And because the life air functions in this fivefold way, it is compared to the five-footed serpent. The soul passes through the Kundalini chakra like a serpent crawling on the ground. The life air is compared to Uraga, the serpent. Panchavritti is the desire to satisfy the senses, attracted by five sense objects, namely form, taste, sound, smell, and touch. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Panchakalpatarubhyascha vipassandevaccha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation repeated. The five working senses and the five senses that acquire knowledge are all male friends of Paranjani. The living entity is assisted by these senses in acquiring knowledge and engaging in activity. The engagements of the senses are known as girlfriends, and the serpent, which was described as having five heads, is the life air acting within the five circulatory processes. Hare Krishna. Just want to thank the devotees allowing me to be here and to share some hopefully nectar from the Srimad Bhagavatam to allow us to relish this pastime. And this is a very special place for me, Gita Nagari, because when I was very new, I had visited here with my spiritual master, who is my spiritual master now. And I had only been in the movement for maybe 2 months, 2 or 3 months or so. And this was 2014. We visited, and it was probably October, early October, late September of 2014. I was with His Holiness Danavir Goswami. We visited for a few days. Things look pretty different now than then, in a very good way. A lot more facility and more devotees, and it's very nice. And yeah, it left a nice imprint in my devotional life. So it's very special. All the devotees are doing so much wonderful service here. So I'm very grateful to be here. So this past time, since I haven't been for this, I wanted to just share some context for my own benefit and hopefully benefit of others. So King Prachini Barhi was also known as Bari Shad. He's a descendant of Maharaj Prithu. And Maharaj Prithu, he renounced his kingdom and left his kingdom to his son. And now we have some father, some son, some um, heirs, and then we get to Barishant, who is known as also Prachini Barishant. So he was actually, the Bhagavatam explains that he was expert in these rituals for fruitive results, performing these karmic conduct rituals as a king. And also he was expert in mystic yoga, which is interesting. So he's quite an exalted personality. Of course, we know Maharaj Prithu is an incarnation, a empowered soul to rule. So he had 10 sons by the daughter of the ocean, Shatadruti, and his 10 sons were the Prachetas. And you all heard in previous chapters that the Prachetas performed austerities in the water after they were instructed by King Prachinibari to populate the universe, because King Prachinibari became a Prajapati. So the Prajapatis, they assist Lord Brahma in populating the universe. Somebody was speaking recently, maybe it was the other day, I don't know. But anyway, Lord Brahma has a difficult task to populate the universe. I think one Prabhu was mentioning that recently. And sometimes, sometimes people become renounced and they don't want to do it. So you may get angry, like at the four Kamars. So anyway, King Prajanibari was a Prajapati, so he had these sons Prachetas. He instructed them to populate the universe. They went to go perform austerities, and they actually pleased Lord Shiva. We heard this. And Narada Muni became compassionate towards King Prachinibari, because he was thinking this king is so involved in these rituals for fruitive results, these yagyas, simply for gaining, fruitive results. So he was compassionate. So he went to him and was asking him why he was performing these rituals. And King Prajanibari, by his good qualities, addressed Narada Muni and inquired out of humility, which is a good way to gain the mercy of the great sages and devotees. And so he was inquiring from Narada Muni. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know what the purpose of life is. I'm bewildered like this. So then Narada Muni was able to give him so much. And in the beginning of this chapter, Narada Muni previously had described this Paranjana pastime, but King Prajanibari was saying that I'm very dull, I'm very attached, I'm bewildered at my intelligence. Can you please explain this more? Can you please help me understand? So now Narada Muni is going a little bit further in depth. So in this particular verse, we are hearing about the senses, and this allegory sometimes a lot of times goes over head. So the five working senses and five senses that, do you know what the five working senses are? Well, I can have a little trivia here. Do you know any of them?
The five senses.
5 working senses.
5 working senses.
Yeah.
No.
This is part of Sankhya, this analytical study of the material world. Anyway, we have 5 working senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses. This is explained in it's explained in the, I believe, the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, a few times in Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, so we have the 5 working senses, which are the voice, you could say the mouth, the hands, the legs, the anus, and the genitals. These are our 5 working senses. They perform work, they do things, they can grab things, like that. We have our 5 knowledge acquiring senses, which we perceive this world and we accumulate information, and then we process and we try to, understand things of this world, the nature of this world, and truth of this world. So we have our eyes, we have our ears, our eyes hear, our ears hear, our eyes see things, we acquire knowledge by seeing, we acquire knowledge by hearing, we acquire knowledge by smelling, smell some aromas. We have our hands which touch things, so we can understand, the properties of objects by their sense of touch. And we have the eyes, ears, skin. That is the sense of touch. The hands are the working sense. So the skin, the sense of touch. The tongue, which tastes things, and the eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and skin. Those are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. And these senses are how we enjoy this world. And enjoying this world means our senses come in contact with sense objects. So this is all explained in this analytical study of the material world, this Sankhya Yoga. So the sense objects are, we heard in the purport, form, smell, sight, or forms, taste, sound, smell, and touch. So these are the sense objects by which our senses are always anchoring for them. Our senses are always desirous of coming in contact with these sense objects. Now, therein lies a problem for us, because as is stated from Prema Bhavarta, that we have this desire to enjoy this material world. And therefore, we acquire a material bhati, which is composed of these set of senses grouped about the mind. So the problem is that we cannot actually fully enjoy this material world, as Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, that it's not possible because this is temporary enjoyment. And Krishna mentions, Ehi samsparsha bhoga dukkha yonaya evate aravanta dukonteya ramate nateshu ramate buddha. He says that these wise men, these great sages, they are not interested in enjoyment of this world, which is coming from the contact of the material senses with the sense objects. They have no interest in that because it's temporary. Instead, they focus on spiritual enjoyment. So that is the point. The senses in contact with the sense objects, there is some enjoyment there, but it's material, temporary, and never leaves one satisfied. that happiness is just like a drop of water in the desert. So we know this. We know about it. The Bhagavatam explains that to come to devotional service, one has to be sufficiently frustrated with the material world. So that means that we have become somewhat frustrated to some sufficient degree to this material world, which means that we've tried to enjoy these senses with contact with the sense objects. We tried to get that enjoyment, but it wasn't it. It wasn't what we were really wanting it to be. But we tried, and we tried again, in different ways. But it never left the self satisfied. The only way to satisfy the self is explained as a haikitya pratiyata yatna suprasidati, which is to unmotivatedly and in an uninterrupted way serve the Supreme Lord. And then that will fully satisfy the self. So how do we do that? Because we have these senses, they need engagement. Either we engage them in the sense objects, in the material sphere, or we engage them in serving Krishna. So which one shall we do?
Serve Krishna.
Serve Krishna. Yes. That is the whole process of bhakti, is engaging our senses in the service of the Lord. So we do various things in which engage our senses, and this is more practical versus denying everything, like the Mayavadis. They deny everything as illusion in this world. What is it? Something Jagan Mitya, they say everything is illusion, everything is false. So then they try to deny, their senses, deny various aspects of this world. But the Vaishnavas say, no, we have to engage our senses in this world for the service of Krishna. That's transcendental. So it's way more practical. And especially in this modern age. Yes, thank you, Yashodev. Brahma Satyam Jagamitya. So we engage our senses in the service of the Lord. So we have examples like Maharaj Ambarish. He was a great king. And he engages all of his senses, working senses, knowledge acquiring senses, all in the service of the Lord. He used his legs to walk to the temple. We're doing that, walking to the temple. He was doing various kinds of services like this, smelling the tulasi leaves offered to the Lord. Everything, we can use all of our senses in the service of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada has so expertly established this International Society for Krishna Consciousness and a lifestyle of, we have temple lifestyle, we have, farm communities, we have so many aspects we have so many services that we can render to the Lord in which we can perform action with our senses in the service of the Lord. Especially our temple worship and deity worship morning program. There's so much involved in that. We can smell the incense. Naturally, we get to smell the incense offered to the Lord, the flowers offered. Maybe we're not doing so much this because of COVID, but we have those available. And we're seeing the arti, we're seeing the deity form. So many senses are being engaged. Our senses are being engaged in so many services of the Lord simply by following this, what Srila Prabhupada has given us in this temple worship, the deity worship, which is essential for us to make advancement as neophytes. So we in one hand, we have the senses can degrade us. And on the other hand, the senses can bring about the greatest liberation or the highest perfection of life, which is to go back to Godhead and attain our original constitutional position as a servant of the Lord in one of the five rasas. So we can attain that by engaging our senses in the service of the Lord in this process of bhakti yoga. And that is desirable. So there's one example about the senses, which is that they are like serpents. So I was reading this bit. Prabhupada was giving some class, and he was speaking about this point. And he was saying that just like a serpent has fangs and poisonous fangs, and these poisonous fangs, this is what make the serpent dangerous. But if there's a serpent in this room, and you knew, you would be frightened, but if you knew that the serpent didn't have these poisonous fangs, then you wouldn't be frightened at all. Just, of course, snakes look pretty scary, so maybe you would be frightened. But the principle is we're talking about here is that they lose their threatening nature by removing the fangs, the poisonous fangs from them. So when we engage our senses in Krishna consciousness and the service of the Lord, then our senses become like serpents without poisonous fangs. And they become subdued like that. And then they become our friends. They become our friends instead of our foes. And that's how we actually purify our senses, is engaging in the service of the Lord. So when our senses are purified, Tasha Krishna Namari Nava Veprayam Indrai Sevan Mukhe Jivado Swayam Nivasparat Yada. That Srila Rupa Goswami explains that with these blunt senses, we can't actually appreciate Krishna in his form, name, pastime, entourage. But when we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, then, specifically with the tongue, then we can start to appreciate these aspects of Krishna, form, pastimes, entourage, name, everything in relation to Krishna will start to relish when we engage our senses in the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada was explaining in this lecture that the tongue is actually the most formidable sense. So I was reflecting on this because it is the most formidable sense. So we have to understand why, what, and how it affects us. And we were speaking a little bit yesterday about it, that in the Nectar of Instruction, in the first text, Rupa Goswami explained Vacho Vegam, that to control this urge of the tongue, then one can be qualified to make disciples all over the world. Of course, there's 5 other things you got to control too. But it starts with the tongue. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that there is like a straight line. You have of senses, you have the tongue, belly, and genitals. So when you control the tongue, then you control all the other senses. And we have, there's 2 principles which are given how to control the tongue. And that is by tasting Krishna prasadam, only taking prasadam, foodstuffs which are offered to the Lord. And the other is speaking about Krishna, speaking Krishna katha instead of gramya katha or prajalpa, or things not in relation with Krishna. So these are 2 principles, how to control the tongue. Now the details, because you could say, okay, I'm taking Krishna prasadam, and I'm, saying some things about Krishna, but maybe you're not saying or tasting. Maybe you're taking too much prasadam, or you're taking too opulent all the time, or you're talking about Krishna and the Rasa Leela, So there's some details which become more defined, or become more. You become more. What's the word? You become more refined in the details, because as we advance in devotional service, we might be coming from a place where we're only taking prasadam when we are meeting devotees, or we're only when we associate with devotees. And we may be first coming to the movement, or we only may be talking about Krishna when we come to the movement, right? But now, if we're living in an ashram or we're trying to practice social service seriously, then we're doing these things all the time. And now we become more refined in them, like, okay, I gotta take Krishna prasadam, but yeah, I'm already doing that, so I'm good, right? Tongue's controlled. But there's more to it. And we know that if we take too much opulent foodstuffs, then the senses become very strong. Or if we take too much prasadam, then the senses become very strong. Or if we, yes, or if we're speaking about topics which we're not qualified to speak about so much, like from the beginning, in the neophyte stages, we're talking about Rasa Leela all the time. Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, but then we're becoming disturbed in mind. We're becoming agitated by lusty desires. Then it may not be so productive for us to speak about those topics. So then we have to speak a little differently, you know. So the details will become more refined for us, but those are the principles that we taste Krishna prasadam and we speak about Krishna. And speaking about Krishna doesn't necessarily mean just speaking about the pastimes of Krishna, but we also speak about things in relation to Krishna. So we can be speaking about concrete and it still be Krishna conscious. There's one devotee in Vrindavan, I don't remember his name, but he was explaining to Srila Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, I want to give up this managerial service. I want to just go and chant. I just want to chant and focus on thinking about Krishna. I'm just thinking about concrete and construction all day. This is disturbing me. And Prabhupada was chastising that is actually thinking about Krishna, is thinking about how to perform your service and what is all involved in that. So concrete may be one of those. There's also this pastime of Prabhupada. I think it was the first time he was going to Vrindavan. I'm thinking a lot about these points of concrete and construction. It all sort of sticks with me because that's what I think about all the time back in Kansas City. We just poured a new concrete floor, and there's so much that goes into that. And if you ever get into construction, it's like it's a never-ending, endeavor. So you either like halt it completely, or you get into it. At least that's been my experience. So anyway, so Prabhupada was going to Vrindavan, and the devotees were thinking, like, they're excited. This was like one of the first times they went to Vrindavan. They're thinking, oh, Prabhupada's like meditating on, Krishna's pastimes, the Rasa Leela. He's thinking about Krishna personally. And then some discussion was there, and Prabhupada had revealed that he was thinking about cement. And the devotees were like, what the heck? You're just thinking about cement? That's like seemingly like the most mundane thing, industrial, sort of an industrial product, cement, concrete. It's like something very solid, something very strong, very material. But he was thinking about a temple for the Lord. You need cement for a foundation, for a temple. Of course, you don't need cement in all places and circumstances. There's different ways to build buildings, but that was his meditation, was cement. And the devotees were revolutionized. They're thinking about Krishna. So it is like that. But sometimes we can justify thinking of other things in the name of thinking of Krishna, or speaking about other things in the name of speaking of Krishna. So that we will understand as we advance in devotional service, what is actually, what are we talking about in a pure motive? And also having seniors around to kind of help us with that, help us redirect our attention and our words. So on the contrary, if we speak about things that are not in relation to Krishna, then we are like a toad which is croaking in the field and inviting the snake of death to come take us away. So that is an analogy given in Nectar Instruction. Srila Prabhupada explains in Nectar Instruction that if one, it's a really cool meditative comment, that if one is engaged in always speaking Krishna Katha, then they're free from the clutches of death. It's a pretty cool quote. If you're always engaged in speaking about Krishna, then you're free from death, in the sense that you're free from taking rebirth in the material world, right? Free from the fear of death, because you're protected by the Lord. So this tongue has this urge, this pull to speak, to taste, and we have to utilize those in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, we'll speak all sorts of nonsense. Like even the Maya bodies, they say all is one, everything, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, they say all is false, but they sure do spend a lot of time talking about it, right? It kind of contradicts their own philosophy, Or if you speak too much about it, then they say, well, these are just words. Okay, yeah, these are just words, but why are you talking so much? Or some take Mona, silent, the vow of silence, but real silence is actually speaking, not speaking nonsense. So anyway, the whole Mayavad philosophy is completely impractical. And it defeats itself, practically speaking. So we have this urge of the tongue to speak, to taste, and Krishna consciousness is so blissful that we can do those things so blissfully. It's so blissful to take prasadam, right? There's so much amazing prasadam here. I was telling some devotees that I was thinking I was going to be, eating kind of austere when I came here. Not because I was thinking like, but I was just thinking, okay, yeah, maybe I'll be eating kind of austere. I was kind of expecting that. And I got here and there's so much nice prasadam. Of course, when I was previously here, there's nice prasadam too. But anyway, there's so much nice prasadam here, so blissful. And we'll see this weekend that so many people will be coming for this retreat, partaking in so much nice prasadam. It's such a big operation to cook prasadam for the Lord and for the devotees and the newcomers. I heard there's going to be newcomers here, so they'll just love the prasadam. So it's such a great way to engage ourselves and new people in devotional services, utilizing their tongue. Satisfying their tongue with the taste of prasadam. Because the taste of prasadam, it might be some simple prasadam, very profound, like you might have just a banana. But then, like, if it's offered to the Lord, that banana could taste like the most magical banana you've ever had, right? So, this actually is a pretty big deal. This point of just taking prasadam, because today's world, you could go anywhere. Like you're driving, you're getting gas. You have an opportunity to go in that gas station, and there's so many snacks there. So many little chips and candies and drinks and sandwiches, and so much available for the tongue to taste. and easily, spend $1 for some corn nuts or something, spend $1 for some sunflower seeds. And you just grab those things real quick and eat them, And where's the devotion in that? Where's the love in that? Whereas a devotee, he or she is thinking that, preparing some nice foodstuffs for the Lord. Of course, we may have to get some nuts on the road, or whatever, but we could still offer it to Krishna out of love. And of course, we want to do the best, the most ideal offerings, but sometimes it's not available. So, but the whole point is that we first offer to Krishna out of love, and then by that act of devotion, then Krishna frees it from karma, and then we become more and more released from the clutches of Maya and the material energy by taking prasadam. So it's a great austerity, even for a devotee, to just take Krishna prasadam in today's age, just because there's so many things available. And we were speaking yesterday how the tongue is so powerful. These materialistic people, and I know for myself in the past, you just go anywhere, eat anything, and your senses are just running wild because it energizes your senses by taking these. And if you take, certain foods and certain modes of nature, like passion or ignorance, then you become bound to that mode for at least some time. So if you're eating a lot of meat, then you're in ignorance, and you can't understand spiritual topics so well. You can't, you become involved in all those qualities of mode of ignorance. And there's also foods in the mode of passion where too hot, too pungent, too spicy. And then we become so passionate, so interested in fruitive activities and various immediate pleasures of this world. So, yeah, it was very difficult. Whereas when I first got into prasadam, it was like, wow, it's a whole new world. Now we're doing everything out of love and not out of just my own gratification, my own pleasure. And doing things out of love, and also in that process, making so much spiritual advancement, so much advancement towards being perfected, which is becoming our real self, which is an eternal servant of Krishna. Okay, so these are some points. Sorry if that was kind of all over the place, but these are some points about this verse and the themes here, which are enlightened by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. Are there any questions or comments, realizations, corrections from the devotees in the temple or online? We have a nice song online as well. So are we convinced? Use our senses in the service of Krishna? Yes,
Jay,
Dr. Jay.
thank you so much for the wonderful class. Yeah, the other
Mike, so they can hear.
day, when Lila Midori was teaching, she emphasized that we should share either a question or a realization. Okay. to connect with nature. So the first realization I had is very simple. I mentioned that the king, who was a master in mystic yoga and also super advanced in these rituals to bring forth, fruitive activities, but still, I'm sure that even those fruitive activities, those rituals are really hard to do, probably. And even he was like, Narada Muni, I'm so bewildered. Teach me about the purpose of life. I'm so confused.
Mm-hmm.
So that just humbled me because it's like, this guy's a master of mystic yoga. I could barely get up on time. And sometimes I feel puffed up, It's like this guy was like, hey, I don't know anything. I'm so bewildered. Please teach me. So I really like that point. It really deflated the balloon that I am. So thank you for
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing and taking the advice of Mahaji. Yeah, another thing that comes to, another personality that comes to mind is Srila Rupa Goswami, such a great learned scholar, and Sanatana Goswami, such learned personalities, such high positions in society. And what did they do when they approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? They just fell flat. And Sanatana Goswami, with the straw between his teeth, begged the Lord to please help them understand who they were, because they had no idea who they were. And from a material perspective, it doesn't make sense. This person so well off financially, such a high position in society, knows many languages, and they don't know who they are. But we understand that those things are not really us. They are forming our conditioned self, or due to karma, we have accrued some karma, which is resulting in this bhati being very beautiful, or great education, various factors like that. But inside, the soul is hankering for this connection with Krishna, and this sense of feeling authentic, being in our original nature as eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So no matter how much you try to seek that in the material world, through a position, through happiness, through pleasures of this world, you'll never get that. You never awaken to that real nature of Satchidananda. Whereas practicing devotional service, acquiring from the spiritual master, gaining this transcendental knowledge, performing service to the Vaishnavas, to the devotees, performing sadhana bhakti, etc., 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 gradually become purified and be awakened to that, that real nature of the self. And that is very essential for us if we want to be happy. Because we do, we are anandamaya gasat. We are by nature pleasure seeking. Because we're full of bliss. But here in the material world, we're like, bobbing, we're just flinging around, here, there, okay. For the materialists, more or less, over the years, like once they hit about 30, of course, today it's like once you hit 20, you've done, I think David Mutaswami talks about this, I get this from him. You get, by the age of like 21 or so, you've done practically everything material world has to offer. You travel, you've done some drugs, you've had sex, you've done this, you've done that. So many pleasures you've done. Now it's just like, okay, you're going to do the same things now in a little different way. This time you'll travel to Hawaii versus, Cancun. This time you'll travel. This time you'll have a relationship with this partner instead of that partner. So you've done everything, and then when you're 30, you more or less you pretty much concede to, yeah, it's not really going to give me happiness, but I'm conditioned to it, and at least there's something there, some happiness, so I'll just go on. go on trying to enjoy my senses. And then they live their whole life like that, even when they're old. So we heard that, oh, I heard that somewhere else. Even when they're older, 70 years old, still trying to enjoy the same things materially, not being happy. Now they don't know where they're going after they leave this body. So that's the verse that Prabhupada quoted in the purport, is that these people are fooled and they can't understand where they're going, what they're doing, what the purpose of life is. In that purport to 1510 Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains that this is why we have to inquire from a spiritual master, so that we can get that knowledge of what to do, what's the purpose of life. And we see that when we come to devotional service, it becomes very clear. When we come to Krishna consciousness, our mission becomes very clear. Yes, I'm supposed to awaken my dormant love of God. And this is what all the religions are actually pointing to. But now we have just such a clear process how to do it, and process which gives us so much tangible experience, and it's susukham kartam avyam, it's joyfully performed. Like this. So we're almost ending here. I wanted to read this comment here. We have Sarvatma Divya, thank you. Devaki Priti, Devi Dasi, thank you for your great Bhagavatam class. I appreciate you reminding us how to utilize our senses in the service of Krishna, and also the glories of prasadam and sharing it with others. Yeah, I'm a prasadam addict, so I can speak so much about prasadam. Of course, the philosophical aspect, I'm not so well versed, but I can glorify prasadam. It's pretty good. Jagannath Pandit Prabhu, is there a difference between enjoyment and happiness? Enjoyment and happiness. Well, if we're thinking about semantics here, I mean, there's a certain connotation with the word enjoyment that we have, right? Like, and typically when we hear enjoyment, we hear it as kind of like a negative thing. For us that are reading Prabhupada's books and everything, we may hear it initially as some negative thing, but it's something which is a byproduct of devotional service. So in the sense of enjoying, in absence of relation to Krishna, that is not good. That is something we want to give up. But enjoyment comes naturally by the process of devotional service. But for the pure devotee, they don't actually want to enjoy. They're just interested to serve Krishna. But Krishna is so kind that he wants to reciprocate with the devotee, and he ends up giving them some enjoyment. So anyway, as far as semantics goes, I'd have to look up the specific definition of enjoyment and happiness, but do you have any thoughts, Kala, sort of?
Enjoyment versus happiness?
Yeah, is there a difference between enjoyment and happiness?
I would say just from a linguistic perspective, when I think of enjoyment, it's more of like I don't know, like momentary thing, like I'm enjoying something at the moment. While happiness is more
Like, you're right. Kalasaru Prabhu explains that from a linguistic perspective, he thinks that enjoyment is a little bit more like of immediate happiness, like immediate pleasure. Right. Some set time of this experience of enjoying, but happiness is a little more like sustained through a long period of time. Yeah, that's also the way that I've understood it in Shastras. A little more when they use these words. It's a little more like that, like happiness, a little more like your overall sense of being. Are you happy? But yeah. So anyway, it's good to think about that. We can maybe look into that more clearly later. All right, thank you, everybody. I think we're ready for Guru Puja, or Darshanarti, right? We're ready for Darshanarti at 8. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Gitanagari Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Damodar Lalita Vishaka ki jai.